Fafnir was consumed by greed, and that greed would later lead to the betrayal of his family, his eventual transformation into a monstrous dragon, and a hate-fueled revenge plot that would change the lives of all involved forever. But before that, Fafnir was a respected dwarf. He lived in a huge house owned by his father, who was called Hrathmar. Hrathmar was a dwarf king who was known for his riches and his treasure. And the house that he had, not only was it big, but it was lined with gemstones and precious metals. Hrathmar had 5 children. Fafnir was one, and he had 2 other boys, Ota and Regin, and he had 2 girls who were Lingathur and Lofinathur. Out of the 3 boys, the 3 brothers, Fafnir, Ota and Regin, they all had defined roles as part of the household. Regin was a master smith, so he was the one that would take the gemstones or the precious metals and fashion them into ornaments to decorate their house. Ota was actually a sorcerer. He had the magical ability to transform into an otter. The name, Ota, otter, get it? Yeah. So his job is that he would every day go down to the river, transform into an otter, and then catch a lot of fish, and that's what they ate. He would catch the food for the family. And Fafnir was a great warrior, and he had super strength. He was extremely strong, so he was the guard. You see, the house was basically filled with treasure, so they needed protection. Hrathmar didn't trust anyone else with it, so he had Fafnir who would protect the gemstones. He would walk the halls and make sure everything was okay. And the whole family got along, everything was good. But over time, as the years passed, Fafnir would be walking down the halls, and every day he would be surrounded by this treasure, surrounded by his father's treasure, but in actuality, he didn't own any of it. Sure, he got to live in the house, and he got to eat the food that Ota caught, but he felt that he was doing so much every day to protect the treasure, protect the house, protect the family, that he should actually own some of it. Now, Hrathmar often told his children that this treasure is mine, but when I die, as is custom, you will all inherit a share. It will be split into 5 parts and you will all inherit a share. But Fafnir, over time, his resentment started to build, and he was thinking he didn't want to wait for his father to die. He at least wanted some of it now. He wanted to have that motivation, feel like he was being paid for what he was doing. He had committed his life to literally protecting his father's treasure, so he should be able to have some of it. The only person who Fafnir told about what he was thinking was Regin. He felt he could trust Regin enough. Regin wouldn't out him to anyone else, and he was right. Regin was actually kind of feeling the same. He also wanted the treasure, but he was like, well, we're going to inherit it anyway, and I love my father. He got this treasure, he deserved it. Yes, it would be nice to have some, but Fafnir was not hearing it. Fafnir wanted some of the treasure to own, not just to be surrounded by it, not to have the promise of inheriting it later, but to have some of it now. However, what could he do? His father wouldn't listen to him when he asked for it, so he didn't act on it. He couldn't do anything really, so he was just grumbled about it, and the resentment grew and grew and grew. But then one day, as everyone was going about their business, Ota was down at the river, Regin was in the smithy, Fafnir was walking around being all protective but secretly being resentful. There was a knock at the door. Fafnir went to open it, thinking, why was Ota knocking? He could just come in. But when he opened it, he didn't find Ota. He found 3 gods. That's right, 3 gods were at the doorstep. It was Odin, the All-Father, king of the gods. It was Hymir, the god who gave humankind the ability to reason and to have a spirit. And it was Loki, the god of mischief. They greeted Fafnir and they asked for lodgings, essentially. They're like, we're in the area, we know of this house, this wonderful house filled with treasure. Can we stay here the night? And Fafnir was like, oh, yes. He called his father. His father was completely welcoming. The whole family welcomed them in. Of course, they have gods asking for lodgings, of course. So they come in and they're chatting, they're talking. And as they're talking, Loki mentions that they passed a river on their way to the house. And while there, he saw this magnificent otter with a coat with skin that he had never seen before. It looked amazing. And he wanted it. So he grabbed a stone and he threw the stone at the otter, hitting it right in the head and killing the otter. Then he skinned it and took its skin. And everyone in the house froze. And they were like, you killed an otter by the river? And Loki was like, yeah. It was great. Such a great kill. One shot, the stone, bam. Hrathmar said, can I see the coat? Can I see the skin that you took? So Loki didn't know anything was wrong. You can probably imagine where this is going, but Loki takes out the skin. He's like, isn't this great? And then everyone gasps. And Lofnathr starts crying. Regin just has his hands on his head like this. Hrathmar can't believe it. And Loki's like, what's going on? And Hrathmir tells him, my son, Otter, he had the ability to transform into an otter. And he goes down to the river every day to hunt fish for us to eat. The otter you just killed is my son. And Loki and Heinir and Odin are like, now it's their time to be silent and pause, and they're like, oh, wow. So of course, the gods didn't mean to kill Otter. They're just as shocked. It was not their intention. Loki just thought that it was a regular otter. Just one that happened to look pretty cool. But of course, Hrathmar is absolutely distraught. And he demands that the gods pay restitution, compensation essentially for the death. Of course, like nothing they could pay would be worth Otter's life, but they agreed to give more treasure as compensation. Luckily for them, they had a bunch of treasure on them because Loki had previously, a bit before, stolen some treasure from another dwarf called Andvari. So Loki took this treasure, gave it all to Hrathmar, and was like, I'm so sorry, and then the gods left. They were like, we need to get out of here. They gave the treasure and then they left. One might say that Loki was lucky to give the treasure to Hrathmar, although Hrathmar wouldn't be so lucky. You see, Loki found Andvari in a cave with all this treasure, and Loki wanted that treasure. So he had trapped Andvari with a net and then stolen the treasure. Of course, Andvari was not very happy about this, so he cursed a specific ring that was part of the treasure, that whoever would own it, it would bring to them misfortune and destruction. You can kind of see it was already working. When Loki had the ring, he accidentally killed Hrathmar's son, a prince. But he had given it to Hrathmar now. And let's just say that Andvari's curse was working. So Hrathmir got all this treasure, including the magical cursed ring, but he didn't know it was cursed. No one knew it was cursed. He was not the only one grieving. There were still 4 children left that were also grieving the loss of their brother. Fafnir especially was taking it in an interesting way, let's say. He wasn't just grieving the fact that his brother was dead. He was grieving the fact that he wasn't being compensated too. So he said to his father, hey, you lost a son, but we lost a brother. That treasure is compensation to all of us. We should have a share of the treasure Loki just gave you as well. And Hrathmar said, you are going to inherit a share of all my treasure when I die. For now, I am keeping it. This is my treasure. It was my son. And finally, Fafnir said, only inherit when you're dead? Got it. As time went on and everyone grieved Otter's death, Otter was like the heart of the family. Everyone loved Otter. Everyone got along with Otter. So as everyone was grieving, over time, the resentment in Fafnir towards his father was building even more and more until finally he pulled Regin aside and said, our father says that we will only inherit the treasure if he dies. You're the one, Regin, who takes the gemstones, takes the metals and fashions it into ornaments. I'm the one who protects it. Ota was the one who literally got the food so we could survive and live here. Yet Father, who does nothing, keeps the gold. If the only way that we can get any is if he dies, then maybe we can bring his death up a little bit. And Regan was shocked. He was like, you can't be serious. Are you suggesting we kill our own? No, Fafnir, no. And Fafnir said, think about it. We do everything. Don't you want the treasure? Don't you want to be able to use it in life before you get old? And Regan thought about it, and honestly, Regan did. He wanted that treasure. So he said, he agreed eventually. He said, okay, Father got his use of it. It's our time now. When you have family like this, who needs enemies, huh? Craziness. So Fafnir and Regan came up with a plot. One night, while their father was sleeping, they snuck into his room. And while Regan stayed a bit back, he kind of got cold feet a little. He was like, I'll keep watch. What he was keeping watch for, whatever. But it was Fafnir who, with his sword, stood over his father's bed and raised the sword up high. At that moment, Hrathmar opened his eyes. He woke up and saw what was happening. He clocked Fafnir standing above him with a sword. He saw Regan standing a bit behind. He knew exactly what was going on. So he shouted. He called out for his daughters, Lingathur and Lofnathur, but it was too late. Fafnir stabbed his father in the chest, and then pulled out the blade. Lingathur and Lofnathur came running. They ran into the room like, what's going on? What's going on? And then they just see Regan standing there, Fafnir standing holding a sword with blood dripping off it, and then they see their father with a stab wound. And their father, he's dying. He realizes it's too late for him, but he says to Lingathur and Lofnathur, avenge me, my daughters, avenge my death. And Lingathur just says, even if the crime is the death of a father, few sisters would avenge a brother's crime. So Hrathmar essentially curses all his children in his dying breath. He's like, I hate you all. You are no children of mine. And then he dies by the hand of his own son as the rest of his children watched. No one speaks for a while until Fafnir suddenly rushes out the room. Regan is like, what's going on? So he goes after Fafnir. Then Lingathur and Lofnathur go after them as well. And they follow Fafnir to the treasury. In fact, Fafnir goes into the treasury and then he starts gathering all the treasure, including Andvari's cursed ring, all of it. And Regan says, remember brother, this treasure is to be shared between all of us. And Fafnir snarls at him. There's like an aura around him as if something has changed. Regan feels it. And Fafnir says, no, it's mine. Regan is scared by Fafnir's outburst, so he leaves the treasury where his sisters are waiting outside. And he's like, Fafnir's trying to take all the treasure for himself. What do we do? What do I do? This is terrible. And Lingathur just says, ask him. He's your brother. Ask him for the treasure. Regan's like, yeah, you're right. It's just stressful. We yeah. So he goes back inside and he goes to Fafnir and is like, Fafnir, come on. Can I have my share, please? And Fafnir turns on him and holds his sword at Regan's neck and says, leave this place or I will kill you too. Regan gets scared because Fafnir is super strong and he's a great fighter. Regan cannot face him. So Regan just leaves. He's like, this is done. Fafnir gathers all the treasure and then he dips, he goes, leaves the house. He doesn't think it's safe anymore. He leaves his sisters at the house. What are they gonna do? He goes into the wilderness where there's no one, as far away from any people as possible, and he puts all the treasure, including the cursed ring, into a pile to protect it. And over time, he becomes obsessive of his treasure hoard, and it starts to corrupt him. He starts to get paranoid, thinking that Regan or Lingathur or Lofnathur are gonna come and take it from him, or anyone else, some random person. He just thinks that he is in so much danger, and over time the corruption feeds at him until eventually he transforms into a dragon. A monstrous dragon ready to defend his horde from any who would ever want to take it. Some years pass, and Regin is the royal smith to a king called Hjalprek. He was not only given the job to, be the smith, but he was also given the job to be the foster father for a young boy named Sigurd. Sigurd was the son of another king called King Sigmund and his wife Hjordis, but Sigmund was killed before Sigurd was even born. Hjordis eventually remarried another king, but she gave her first child from her first marriage, Sigurd, to Regin to look after. Sigurd, Regin realized, was no ordinary boy. He was stronger than other boys his age, faster than other boys his age, and he was a much better fighter. While Sigurd was growing up, Regin started hearing reports of a dragon deep in the wilderness who killed any that came near, and it was protecting some treasure. And he knew exactly who it was. He knew that was his brother Fafnir, and he wanted revenge. What they did haunted him, and yet he still had not got any of that treasure. So when Sigurd became old enough, Regin sat him down and told him the story, the full story, albeit he put a bit more blame on Fafnir and less blame on himself. But he said Fafnir killed his father, took the gold, and he wants revenge and he wants that treasure. And he said, Sigurd, you are special, you can be a hero. I want you to go and slay the dragon Fafnir for me. And Sigurd, Sigurd was young and boisterous, and he was like, yeah, I can be a hero, I'll do it, but I'm gonna need a sword that can do it. I need you're an amazing smith. I need you to create me a sword that is worthy, that is up to the challenge. And Regin said, yes, let's do it. So he made a sword, the best sword he'd ever made, and he gave it to Sigurd. And Sigurd tested it by just hitting it on a rock. But he was super strong and the sword snapped in two. And Regin was like, okay, not good enough. So he made another sword, even better than the last, and he gave it to Sigurd, and Sigurd just hit it on the rock and it snapped in two. And Regin was like, I don't know what this is, you're too strong. Sigurd's mum heard of what they were doing, heard that her son was going on some kind of quest and he needed a sword. She had the fragments of Sigurd's father's sword that had been broken in his last battle, but was a magical sword. She took the fragments and gave it to Sigurd and said, I heard you need a sword, try and have it made with this. Sigurd thanked her, so he went back to Regin with the fragments from his father's sword. He's like, try and do it with this. So Regin did just that. He reforged using the fragments from King Sigmund's sword and created another magnificent sword. And when Sigurd took it up and he hit it against the rock snapped in two. And Sigurd said, this is the sword I need. This is what I need to defeat the dragon. So they were ready. Sigurd with his new sword, which he called Gram, and Regin going with him. And they traveled through desolate, barren wastelands, through thick forests, through all sorts of different types of wilderness, until eventually they arrived to the place that the rumors said Fafnir was hiding with his horde. And immediately when they arrived, they could tell it was the right place. There were slimy marks through the undergrowth. Trees had been destroyed as if something big had been passing by. Big footprints were in there. It was clear that this was the territory of a massive worm-like dragon. But they had to come up with a plan. Now Regin didn't want to fight. He was no fighter. He was there for moral support, really. Or at least that's what he told Sigurd. But he gave some advice. He said, Sigurd, you can't fight Fafnir one-on-one, face him down. No, you need to be smart about this. What you need to do is dig a pit under one of the paths that we see he takes. We know he takes these paths often because we can see it. So dig a pit underneath, hide in the pit, And then when he passes over, you can stab up with your sword Gram and hit his heart. And Sigurd said, you know what, that's a great idea. I'm happy I brought you along. So Sigurd got to digging. As he was digging, an old man with a beard appeared. This old man was Odin, but Sigurd didn't know that. However, Odin said to him, you can't just build one pit, otherwise the blood of Fafnir will flow into the pit after you stab him and you will drown. Build multiple pits that are connected so the blood can spread out between them and you will survive. Sigurd said, you know, old man who just appeared and then disappeared? Great advice. So Sigurd, real quick, because he didn't want Fafnir to come back before he was done, he dug a bunch of pits that were connected around. This plan had a lot riding on it. If he mistimed the strike, he'd lose. If Fafnir noticed the pits, he'd lose. If Fafnir came before Sigurd finished the pits, he'd lose. But fortunately, he finished the pits. And he covered them a little bit to camouflage them. Regin, at this point, he was out. He went away. He was like, I don't want anything to do with this fight. I'll come back later once the deed is done. So Sigurd waited, and eventually he heard rumbling. He heard big footsteps. He started to feel that air was getting hotter. He realized the dragon was coming. So he waited, and he waited. And then as the dragon traveled over the pit, he timed it perfectly and he stabbed up right into Fafnir's heart. Fafnir's roar of pain shakes all the surrounding area, and his blood starts flowing through the network of pits that Sigurd has made. Fafnir is lying down and is like, who is it who has slain me? And at first Sigurd doesn't answer. He kind of like dodges the answer, does a little bit of a riddle, and they like kind of trade riddles a little bit, talking in twisted words. Fafnir starts to teach Sigurd a little bit. He starts to respect him as he's dying. He's a big dragon, so he's dying kind of slowly. He teaches Sigurd some secrets of magic, a little bit about history, and then he gives a warning. He says, I know who sent you. Be careful, because the person who sent you is not doing it for the reasons that you think. He does not mean to share, as I didn't. Sigurd is like, I grew up with Regin, it's fine. And then Fafnir dies. And that's when Regin comes out of hiding, and he's like, well done. That was good. That was a lot for me. I was so nervous, I was so scared. Oof, I did so much, Regin says. I'm gonna have a nap. Sigurd, why don't you just cut out the heart of Fafnir and cook it up? It's tradition. I'm gonna eat the heart, but you take it out, you cook it. I'll be having a nap. Sigurd's like, okay. So Regin goes to lie down, starts sleeping because he did so much of the work, right? And Sigurd starts cooking Fafnir's heart. And as he is, he's just waiting. There are some like birds up in the trees. He's just looking around. He's quite happy with himself. He's like, yeah, I just slayed a dragon. Didn't even have to fight. It wasn't even a prolonged fight. I just did it. As the heart is cooking, he wants to check if it's done. So he touches the heart and burns himself. He's like, ah. So he sucks on the burn. And by doing that, he drinks a little bit of the blood that's on the heart. And suddenly, he can understand the birds in the trees. And they're talking. What are they talking about? They're laughing. They're like, look at this little kid doing whatever this guy Regin says. He doesn't even know that Regin is planning to kill him and is going to take all the treasure for himself. Sigurd puts two and two together. He's like, wait, the birds are saying that? And Fafnir gave me the warning? No, this isn't going to happen. Sigurd takes Gram and goes over to the sleeping Regin, and in a completely ironic redo of the past, he lifts his sword just as Regin opens his eyes, and Regin looks up and sees Sigurd with his sword above him, the boy who he raised like a son. But for him, there's no one to call out to, and Sigurd kills Regin, his foster father. And Sigurd, at the bird's suggestion, he ate some of the heart, saved the rest till later, and he gained, from eating the heart, he gained new wisdom. He learned more about the world, he could sense more. And he took the treasure. He became so rich now because he owned the treasure. Still did not know that the ring was cursed, but he took the treasure and his life was changed forever. Let's just say that Andvari's curse on the ring was doing its job to bring misfortune and destruction to everyone who owned it. And Sigurd would be no exception. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, then you might also enjoy this one.